Due to some violent content, parental discretion is advised.
I know you gonna dig this.
Happy Saturday. It's a great Saturday because last Saturday we were not here for this show, Sucker Punch. So it's great to be back talking boxing with my man, Mr. Joe Habeeb. This is Sucker Punch Saturdays. First hour here on Ringside Reporter Live. Second hour on my channel, Maestro A, where we, of course, talk all things boxing. And I wasn't in attendance last week here for the show because I actually was on my way out to fly to Vegas to cover the Inoue fight, which we might touch upon later on because it is quite the juxtaposition when you compare that fantastic show with what occurred Saturday. I actually ended up watching that card, the Ring Magazine card in Riyadh from my hotel room in Las Vegas. And, of course, what happened the Friday directly before that, the day before, Times Square, New York City. There was a lot of hype about it. There was a lot of hoopla about it. Ring Magazine making its big splash in the U.S. market. And then its big splash in the Saudi, or I guess we could call it global market. So we're going to talk about what happened because I think Joe spot on with labeling this a fatal flop, and I'm going to give my opinion about it. But Joe, you came up with this magnificent way of describing it so succinctly. It was indeed a fatal flop. Talk to me about it from your perspective, watching it at home, and I'm going to give you my perspective of fight week here in New York City. Go for it.
Well, I think a lot of these fighters had the mentality that the fight that they were fighting on this card was basically more or less a stay busy / tune-up fight. This was the fight they were fighting was just something they had to do to get to the bigger fight they wanted after the one they were fighting on that Friday, right? So that was in their mind. So I think with Devin Haney, he was saying to himself, you know what? I want to save myself for Ryan. The old saying in boxing, just win and look good or look better the next time, right? So I think that was the mentality Devin Haney had. He's saying to himself, yeah, that Ryan fight is down the road. That's a bigger money fight for me. I want to save myself for that fight. I don't want to get cut. I don't want to get injured. So I'm just going to coast. I'm going to go on cruise control. I do think Devin Haney could have done a lot more. We've seen him do a lot more. He's been hot and cold. We've seen him look great against, Regis Prograis. We've seen him look good against other fighters as well. I thought he looked pretty. People criticize his performance against Lomachenko in terms of how close the fight was, but he did stand there and he did spend time in the pocket from an entertaining standpoint. I thought that was a good fight from Devin Haney, and also I thought he edged out and it was a good win. But nevertheless, Teofimo Lopez was another guy who seemed to me like he was just playing around with Barboza. That that came off to me as like a sparring session. But once again, the bigger carrot at the end of the stick for Teofimo Lopez was Boots Ennis, right? And Ryan, I think Ryan mentally and psychologically, I think the atmosphere probably did get to him. Uh, it, it was almost like he described it as other fighters described when they had to fight in the bubble during COVID. There was no crowd to feed off of. It was almost like just being in a gym with really quiet and no one, no crowd there. It was almost like being in a gym sparring. And I think that threw Ryan off. And Ryan's always been hot and cold, anyways. And it is what it is with that. I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, well, this somehow validates Devin Haney now. Look how bad Ryan looked." But Devin Haney didn't look good either. So, you look at it and you say to yourself, Devin Haney arguably looked worse against Ramirez than he did against Ryan. And I go back to this. Ryan did not set the world on fire against Devin Haney. He was looking up at the clock every 3 seconds when he was fighting Devin Haney. He was huffing and puffing. It was a competitive fight if you scored it round by round. I mean, I had it even in rounds, but because of the knockdowns, that's how Ryan won on my card. Some people even gave Devin 7 rounds, 6 rounds, whatever the case may be. That was not a fight where Ryan Garcia set the world on fire. So I don't think this somehow validates Devin Haney, because Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia, in my opinion, based off of what I've seen off of both fighters in this most recent performance, it's still a 50-50 fight to me. So, these guys were paid a boatload of money. So, and they were promised, I think, another boatload of money. They already had fights scheduled. The rematch with Ryan and Devin was all set. And again, like Boots Ennis versus Teofimo is another fight that Turki Al-Sheikh wants. So these guys already had their plans laid out for them. So the goal here was just to get to the next point, right? Just these fights, in other words, for all intents and purposes, were like formalities, I think, and I think these fighters approached it in that manner.
Yeah, look, 2 things there, just to piggyback upon what you said. Number one, we tend to forget how big a favorite Devin Haney was amongst the boxing public going into that first fight against Ryan Garcia. So a lot of what we saw was the shock of the moment. Like, oh, wow, this guy who we didn't think was training for this fight at all, this guy who was partying in nightclubs in New York City and drinking and smoking and, turning up, doing all of these crazy things, was having these successes, right? But to your point, Joe, if you actually scored the fight, it wasn't quite the dominating performance that people have kind of turned it into. Yes, there were the knockdowns. Yes, there were moments where Devin Haney was clearly hurt, buzzed, etc. But to your point, and I saw this there, I was live at the fight. I watched the fight on TV afterwards. There were multiple moments where Ryan looked like, wow, well, I got to finish this round. He's looking up at the score clock to figure out how much time is left in the round. And there were points in the moment where, in the fight, sorry, there were moments in the fight where Devin Haney was kind of making his way back into the fight. Second point, I don't know how many times people are going to have to learn these lessons. We only recently learned it yet again, when the fight, which there was still interest in at the time, between Wilder and Joshua, never happened. Why didn't it happen, Joe? Remind the audience.
Trying to put the cart before the horse.
Right.
Trying to put the chicken before the egg, and they've made this mistake time and time again. Listen, we talked about this. Both Haney and Garcia were coming off long layoffs, so no one really had an advantage there. So again, what was the sense of having this in between fight? Turki Al-Sheikh's given us all a lot of great fights. It's hard to criticize the guy in terms of value for dollar, but he keeps doing this thing where there's always these in between fights before the big one, and we've seen this formula backfire time and time again. Like Roy Jones versus Bernard Hopkins, they had their interim fights, and what happened? Roy Jones gets knocked out by Danny Green. You know,
Yeah.
this fight's. I do believe, in my opinion, Ryan versus Devin will probably still happen anyways because both guys did not look great, right? And after Devin's performance, who's going to really want to fight him?
But
Like,
the luster is gone.
of course,
Like
the luster's gone.
the
No
luster's
doubt about it.
gone,
But here's the
right?
thing. No, but listen to me here. Hear me out on this
Yeah.
one. Where does Devin go from here? Like, who's going to be banging down the doors to
I
fight
got a
Devin
better
right now?
question. Who cares?
That's what I'm saying.
Who cares at this point? Look, you don't turn up to a fight and do what he did and then expect people to care about who you're fighting next because I mean, we're going to get into this too with the William Skull Canelo fight next. Does anyone care about seeing William School again? I mean, I would argue probably not outside of maybe friends and family. I mean, after seeing Devin Haney fight that way, who wants to see who's clamoring to see Devin Haney fight again on any like major show? Yeah, throw him on an undercard somewhere. You know, I'll watch. But am I interested? And also, the fight wasn't even at 140. So I guess that means he can't make 140 anymore, right? So do you really want to see Devin Haney against Boots Ennis?
I don't.
Or what are we looking at? The winner of of Amadio Barrios versus Manny Pacquiao against Devin Haney?
Yeah.
Do we want to see Devin Haney against Brian Norman Jr.? I mean, name your top welterweight. I'm not really interested in seeing Devin Haney fight him. Go for it, Joe.
Yeah, I don't think, like I said, and I'll keep repeating this, not to sound redundant, that no one's going to be banging down the doors to be fighting Devin Haney because win, lose, or draw, there's always the possibility that the fight can be turned into a stinker, right? You're never going to look great fighting Devin Haney, win, lose, or draw. And I think if you're Teofimo Lopez, you're saying to yourself, why am I going to fight this guy when I can fight Boots Ennis and have two titles on the line?
Correct.
Right? Like, there's more upside. Name a big name fighter that's going to turn around and look at what Devin Haney did in this last performance. He doesn't have the belt. Well, I don't know. Does he still have the belt at 140? I don't think they stripped him yet.
They made him champion emeritus. He's not the champion anymore.
So he doesn't even really technically have the belt anymore. And he's one of those fighters, in my opinion, that actually needs the belt for people to want to fight him, right?
Yes.
So what is the upside here to fighting Devin Haney unless you get paid a boatload of money, which I don't know if that's going to be the case now.
Yeah, why? Look, let's just talk things and present things the way they actually happened, right? If you look about the drama around the Gambosis fight, those weren't really great fights, but there was drama around them because it's not typical for a name in the United States to travel overseas, right? He was fighting for undisputed, right? So there was that. And then there was also the stuff surrounding his father not being able to get into the country. So boxing is a sport constructed not just around what happens inside the ring, but it exists by kind of presenting all these narratives and getting people excited about drama that's happening. There was a lot of drama around those fights with Gambosis, but it's not like those fights were like great fights, exciting fights, right? The fight with Loma, again, there's drama there.
Most people think he lost that fight too.
Right. And there was the whole thing about the weigh-in and how can he even make this weight anymore?
Yeah.
And they had the real weigh-in and then the ceremonial weigh-in. I was out there for it, right? It was seen as this big opportunity for Loma to finally be undisputed. You getting my drift here?
Well, it's
about all of the drama around the event. But in the absence of the drama, what we're left with, I'm sorry to say, I'm going to quote Chairman Mao here, a paper tiger. Go for it.
Well, and let's keep this in mind. And again, hindsight is 2020, and I'm going to play Monday morning quarterback here.
We're analysts. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, when you look at Haney's, win over Prograis, that really hasn't aged well because most people, myself included, thought Prograis lost to Zorilla. I thought he lost that fight.
I did.
And then after the Haney performance, he got beat probably more soundly against Catterall. He was hurt more against like so that win didn't age well. Like you beat a, a really faded Regis Prograis, right? So again, like this was a guy that just couldn't pull the trigger in Prograis. He was really slow. He was really slowing down, and you could see the difference. So that even that win, which was probably his most impressive in terms of just from a visual standpoint, watching the fight, even that really hasn't aged well because we see how Prograis performed against Catterall, and we saw how he performed against Zorilla. Like the writing was already on the wall for him. So it's not like you were in there with some killer at that particular time. Not taking anything away from Prograis. I mean, he was a former world champion, but his recent performances have shown that he significantly has faded in comparison to when he fought himself, Josh Taylor. That was probably like the last really great performance from him, in my opinion.
Agreed. No, you're absolutely right. And here's the thing. Look, we talked about the performances in the ring. If I was going to rate the performances, I'd have to probably say Teofimo Lopez number one. Not that it was an amazing fight, far from it.
And even he was going through the motions at points in his performance against Barboza.
It looked like a sparring session.
You're in there with a guy Barboza who's not a huge puncher, and you're saying to yourself, at what point you're playing with this guy. You're laughing, you're goofing around.
Yeah.
At what point do you just put your foot on the gas? I mean, this guy, you've been one step ahead of him the whole fight. The guy couldn't touch you. He couldn't throw a handful of rice and hit you in the ass. At what point do you just say, let me try to close a show on this guy?
It's funny because a few months ago, my friend Ludo told me, Amilcar, you're more of a feline guy than a canine guy. And my immediate response was, no, I like cats and dogs. I like both. But if I'm going to be honest about it, I actually do prefer felines. I've had dogs, grew up with a dog, but I've always had cats. Since I was born, there was always a cat in my house. And you know what cats do when they find a mouse, Joe? They play with their food.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's a game to them. Before they kill it, they almost kind of torture it. They just play around with it, right? Teofimo was just playing around. It seemed with like he was playing around with Barboza. I mean, there was no threat really coming in, right? And it didn't seem like he was interested in really going forward and reminding us about that old Teo that was getting those kind of spectacular knockouts or really giving spectacular performances. I don't know if that Teofimo's still there. I don't know if that Teofimo's going to be there at 140. I'm still not convinced. I'm even less convinced about seeing it at 147. So, but he did have the best performance of the night, I think, right?
By default.
I'd have to give the second one to Rolly, right?
Yeah.
The second one to Rolly. I mean, maybe even the first one, I don't know. Guys, what do you think in the chat? Rolly 1 or Rolly 2? He did get a knockdown.
I'd have to give it to Rolly.
I'm talking myself into it. I'm giving it to Rolly. He scored the knockdown.
10-1 underdog.
Yeah. I got to go Rolly number 1, Teofimo number 2. And to be quite honest, is there even a number 3? I can't even say Devin Haney number 3. That's how bad it was. Really. So we've talked about the performances of the fighters on that night. We also have to talk about the performance of like the promoters in the event, because there was a big setup, there was a huge campaign, but then the reveal, the moment, the event, the promotion, I don't think came anywhere close to living up to the hype. What am I talking about? Well, here's evidence number 1 over here. Right? This is a rendering that was sent out. I can tell people it didn't look anything like this on fight night. It wasn't an open Times Square with people being able to watch the fight and enjoy themselves around big screens if they weren't right there ringside. it looked nothing like this. It really didn't. It looked nothing like this. There's another one that was sent out over on social media. It looked nothing like this over here, right? So, Ring Magazine is featured right in these shots. So we have to point some of the criticism here towards Ring Magazine. And look, the expectations that they set them themselves. Let's have a look. Let's have a listen. Joe, you're the one who actually brought this particular thing to my attention originally. Let's have a look. Let's have a listen. Here we go. Oh, I got to put the volume.
Connor, we are going to hear from Rick Reno, CEO.
Can you hear this at all, Joe, or is it coming through for you?
No, it's Chris and Connor, we are going to hear from Rick Reno, COO of the Ring Magazine, to say a few words.
First, I want to thank everybody for coming out and supporting this event. And, I want to say, make no mistake about it. This is not a Matchroom event. This is not a boxer event. This is a Ring Magazine event. This is our identity, is these stack-loaded cards. We first wanted to put cards together. We looked at the marketplace, and quite honestly, there was a lot of garbage out there, a lot of garbage events being peddled. When we, met with different broadcasters to, show them some of the events we wanted to put together, the people at the Zone, there were like tears in their eyes, tears of happiness. Like, oh, you're going to present this to us? Because they've been peddled so much shit over the years that they were like, oh my God, you're going to do events like this? And we said, we promise, we won't go away. It won't be 1 or 2 events. There'll be plenty of events. So the people that, the promoters that partner with us, they know their fighters are going to be in tough fights. There's no gimmies. Every now and then they try to, sneak a stinker under there, think we won't notice. I swear, this guy's good, mate. He's good. It'll be a good fight. And, we just cross it right off and put on evenly matched fights. And this main event is no different. It's just one of those fights, like someone stated earlier, you're going to remember it years down the line. And those are the types of events we want to do, whether it's this, whether it's Times Square, Alcatraz, the event we're doing in July in New York. We want to do stacked cards, evenly matched fights, because, we don't want to be peddling garbage out there like a lot of other people are. I don't want to name any names. I won't say if any guilty parties are with me right now, but...
Name them. Go ahead. This is what we're here for.
Well, I could say a lot more, but I know Robert Smith is out here with his ticket book. I don't want to get into any trouble.
So we'll leave it at that. I always like hearing from Chris Eubank Jr. there at the end. But so look, the expectation was set high. It was set high by the people that were in charge of this event. Now, a detractor or someone who said might criticize this and say, oh, well, they were talking about the Chris Eubank Jr. Conor Benn fight. No, they weren't. You literally heard it. They were talking about the kind of fights, the kind of promotions, the kind of events that they would be putting forward for the fans. And I think that this particular fight card last Friday night in New York City failed from a broadcasting perspective and failed from a spectator perspective down on the ground, live in New York City. Go for it, Joe.
Hindsight, again, is 2020, right? On paper, the card wasn't horrible, but let's be honest. Ryan was a huge favorite over Raleigh. Devin was a huge favorite over Ramirez, right? And Teal was a significant favorite, over Barboza. So these weren't, on paper, these were not 50-50 fights. Once again, these were placeholder fights. These were fights to get to the next fight for these guys, because they all had potential opponents lined up after this. Now, credit to Raleigh, because he was a huge underdog, and he won. But that fight was not a barn burner because it was like he was fighting a guy who really didn't want to engage. And, he knocked him down one time. But after that, he would land one or two shots. But nobody on that card lit the world on fire. And again, doesn't always happen. Like, fights don't always play out the way you expect them to play out. But those fights, all of them, every single one of them were significantly underwhelming. Now, you could say, well, why are you blaming Turkey Al-Sheikh for that, for the fighters not performing? I just explained that those were not 50-50 fights as Rick Reno was describing. Now, you could argue, well, okay, you're not going to get 50-50 fights on it, every time out. You're not going to hit a home run every time out. You can't have a Eubank Ben type of event every night out. Yeah, okay, I get it. But all of those fights had an A side fighting a significant underdog B side.
Yeah, what's the difference?
There was
at
no
the end of the
50,
day, like,
technically there was no 50-50 fights on that card. Now, I thought Barboza would perform a lot better than he did. I thought that fight would be a lot more competitive than it was. But no one, like, everyone said there was going to be an upset. Probably it had the potential for an upset. But with that being said, no one thought it was going to be Raleigh, and no one thought Ryan was going to just mentally shut down. And here's the difference, too.
mm-hmm.
People are going to look at that Ryan Raleigh fight and say, oh, now we know that he was on something with Devin. Now we know that, this is, how Ryan can't win without being on PDs. Now we know that Devin will probably easily outbox him in the rematch. Oh, maybe you do, but I don't, because, again, Raleigh's a different fighter than Devin. And if Devin fights Ryan at 147, listen, Devin wasn't a puncher at 135. He's really not. He wasn't a puncher at 140. Is he going to be a puncher at 147? He didn't hurt Ryan like Raleigh did. And you notice when Ryan gets hurt, like when he got hurt in the Tank fight and when he got hurt in this fight, you see that look on his face, like he just shuts down. There's a look of giving him, like resignation. And when Luke Campbell knocked him down, right? He didn't have that look because he wasn't really hurt. Like, it was just like a flash knockdown.
Flash knockdown.
Yeah, when Devin hit him with that left hook early in the fight, he kind of laughed at it. He was like, yeah. But when you saw when Tank hit him and knocked him down, he was like on the ground like.
No, the fight changed. The fight changed
shit,
in that moment.
Happened? Oh, shit, what happened to me? Same thing with Raleigh. Like, when Raleigh knocked him down, he had that look on his face like, oh, shit. So, again, when you hurt Ryan, he turns into a different fighter. I don't know if Devin Haney, and I don't believe, and I suspect strongly that Devin Haney can't have that impact on Ryan when he lands that big shot. If he does land a big shot. When I mean big shot, I mean clear, right? So unless Devin Haney can hurt Ryan, I don't know with 100% certainty that he could beat Ryan. Based off these last two performances, I still don't think you can say, oh, well, there's no way Ryan beats Devin now. I don't think Ryan will be a 10-1 underdog in the rematch, in my opinion.
The problem was that they didn't go to this fight immediately. And we talked about that. I said that like right away. I mean, there's no reason not to go to the rematch right away. Both guys have been inactive. So nobody has an advantage there, right? It's not like the fight's going to get better because they have tune-up fights. They both have been inactive. And now, see, the thing is, before, the last thing we saw was a very drama-filled, explosive fight with multiple knockdowns. Let's go for the rematch. Now it's, well, we just saw them in subpar, pretty boring performances in a lackluster, pretty boring event. It's not exactly going to lead people to be clamoring for this fight. I don't know. I could be way off. I just don't think there's that much interest in Ryan versus Devin Haney anymore.
I think we're still going to get it next.
Yeah. So
I think we're going to get it next.
I did want to go to this because I don't often agree with this particular person, Joe. I've seen him on your channel. I think he's got some great fighters, but in terms of the things he's said in the past, I don't often agree with him. And I've also taken a view that I'm kind of coming off of a little bit in the last, I would say, year or so. I used to always take the view of I'm a worker, the fighters are workers, right? I'm not a capitalist, I'm a worker. I'm not someone who buys labor like a capitalist. I'm someone who sells my labor like a worker. And I'm in line with the boxers. I'm not in line with the promoters. To me, the promoters, the capitalists, the boxers, the worker. But as you've pointed out to me in the past, Joe, and speak to this before I show this clip, actually, it's not that cut and dry in boxing. Because in many cases, the big time fighters are actually almost like co-capitalists with the promoter. And in a sense, it's the undercard fighters that are also the workers that are getting exploited, and the oftentimes the fighters are making demands where they're actually making more money than the promoters, which they of course should. So in many cases, the big time fighters actually have the promoters working for them. So the water's a little bit muddied here. It's not as cut and dry as it used to be for me 2, 3, 4 years ago when I was like pro worker. Yeah, go for it, Joe.
Respectfully,
yeah.
And I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole too deep with you, but respectfully, right? You're arguing class, right?
Yes.
You have upper class. You have tiers, right?
Yeah, you got working class and capitalist class, working class and ruling
now
class.
You say capitalist class.
Yes.
Now, I would argue if you're selling your labor, right, you are still competing with other workers. When you go in an interview, you're competing with 10 other workers who sat in that same chair you sat in, trying to sell their labor to that corporation. So that in itself is free market competition. Now you can argue, right? Argue the pluses and minuses. You can argue because you have a system and you have, situations where the system is working the way it's supposed to be and it should be, and you have situations where it's not.
Yeah.
So I'm not a throw out the baby with the bathwater type of guy. So capitalism, I believe, even people who say they're not capitalists, technically, in my opinion, they are, because if you are competing with other people, you're in the free market selling your labor like someone else is selling your labor.
Look, we're not going to go down.
And boxers do that as well.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to tell the promoter if you should sell me and not sell that guy because I have more upside. And boxers don't all make the same amount of money. Why? Because they're in competition with others. So the best make more than people who are not as good as them.
That should always be the case.
That is free market competition.
Yes, it is. The best should make more. My argument wasn't about free market versus not market. My argument before was just about I'm with the fighter because the fighter's fighting and they're the worker and they're selling their labor, and here's this greedy promoter trying to take advantage. But here's the thing.
Let me end it on this.
Yeah.
When people like to put these labels on each other, to me, it's a way of it's a distraction, and it's a way that the people at the top are pulling the strings, manipulating. Oh, well, it's the capitalist versus the socialist. It's the socialist versus the communist. No, it's always going to be about class. And when you have this, the goal is to try to bring it as close as you can, right?
Yeah.
And these people up here, a lot of them don't want you here. They want you here. And the distraction is they're going to put labels on you: working class, middle class, upper middle class, lower class.
I agree with you on that.
What it's really about is the people who own, right?
And the people who don't.
And the people who are selling.
Yeah.
And But so you have owners and you have buyers.
Yes.
That's all it is. That's all it is.
That's all it is. We've come around. We've closed the loop on that. Yes. That's it. You got people who buy. Yeah, we got people who buy. We got people who buy their labor and people who sell it. And I'm the guy that sells. So here's the thing. Because Warrior Way is hitting it right to where I was going with this. The question is now, and I've never thought I'd even have to ask this, are these guys being paid too much money for the level of competition
Oh my
that they're
God.
involved in? That's where I was looping this
And I'm
all
going to contradict myself. I'm going to contradict myself.
Because
after this.
that is where I have now landed the plane. Because again, you asked me this 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. You know, I'm a milk carter, militant worker rights guy, and they should make everything they can out of these greedy promoters.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. You get to a point where that now affects the experience of the other worker. You know who the other worker is? Joe in a milk car who go to work Monday to Friday, busting their ass, and want to watch boxing, and now I have to watch an event like the ones we watched Friday and Saturday night. That is where I was going with this. And then I want to play an interview with Samson real quick, because I actually agree with some of it. Go.
I'm going to be a hypocrite here. And I love doing this because I evolve over time, right, when I get information. And shout out to Ring IQ, because he makes some great points when he talks about this, right?
Yeah.
I always say there's no such thing as overpaying anybody, because the market dictates what somebody gets. But you go back to 2008, where the market was dictating what people were getting, but that market was overly inflated. And as a result of that market being artificially and overly inflated,
we had a housing crisis.
We had a crisis. So Ring IQ always says this, like, okay, these guys are getting paid such amount of money, but what are they actually generating in pay-per-view revenue? Who are they selling out the arena, right? And the pay-per-view market is in the toilet right now, right? Because
we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that in hour number two. Hour number two, we're gonna be talking about that.
Arguments with people who are just emotional people who don't act with rationale. They don't operate in the logical world. And when I talk to people, and this is even beyond anecdotal. Everybody, I talk to so many people who have IPTV. It's not even going on the internet and finding a link. You can sign up for services and download apps on your Fire Stick
that are legal in other countries that you can access through a VPN.
That are legal technically, because you're not the one transmitting the signal, you're receiving the signal. And even these people in the United States can say, all I'm doing is transmitting something that's been placed online. I'm not stealing it.
I'm just watching TV from Gibraltar, from the Cayman Islands, from Malta.
We have never had it this easy, where you have all of these IPT services out there that have been around for 5, 8, 10 years. And
Joe, I want you to, I don't want to cut you off, but I want you to make that point in hour number two, because we're going to talk about the Canelo Crawford event.
Right,
and that's definitely going to come into the analysis.
I'll tie it up real quick. So people are telling me, the people who are going to steal this fight, we're going to steal it anyway. So illegal streaming or not even illegal, streaming the fight has no impact on paper. Come on, bro. Look at the data. Like, when was the last time you saw a million buys in a pay-per-view? You just don't see it anymore, right? Because again, it's never been this easy for people to download IPTV on their Fire Stick, right? And have access to watching these fights. And in the United States, nobody is even actively caring about it. They're not searching for it. You know, unless you're in a bar and you're charging people to watch a fight that you've illegally streamed yourself, then you're not gonna, no one really cares. So again, the market has changed. And as a result of it, you know, these guys are getting paid artificially inflated numbers, in my opinion. It's that simple. And I thought I would never go back on it, because I was always the guy, the market dictates, the market dictates, the market dictates. Yeah, but the market right now, in my opinion, and I don't even think it's my opinion, I think the data shows it, the circumstantial evidence shows it, that the market is artificially inflated. And then we'll go further on it in the next hour. You're on mute, sir. You're muted. Oh, I think he just fell off. Yeah, so that's been my point all along. Like I've always said, the market dictates what these guys get paid. But I have to admit, Turkey a la Sheikh has at this point, just like PBC did when they got that Waddell Reed money that from the hedge fund manager. I think as PBC artificially inflated the market, and they admitted it. It was like they admitted like this is a loss leader format that we're doing right now, right? I think what Turk Al-Sheikh is doing is he's doing something very, very similar. Go ahead, Maestro.
Yeah, I'm good now.
Yeah, you're good.
Awesome. So yeah, look, like I said, 2 years, 3 years ago, I'd never be agreeing with the promoter saying fighters are earning too much money. I just want to play the beginning of an interview I did with Samson Lekowitz. You guys can go watch the full interview on my channel. Here's a brief bit of it here. Let's have a look. Let's have a listen. Here we go. This is Maestro, and I'm here with the one and only Samson Lekowitz. Samson, before I ask you questions about things unrelated to what happened tonight, talk to me about how proud you must be. I got to go forward
This
here.
will happen on New York, and this
Here we go.
and that they pay the fighters, getting
This is it here.
Saudi, a good fight.
No.
And this will happen this weekend. And Las Vegas, for many, many years, is Cinco de Mayo.
No.
And was Cinco de Mayo again, because not in New York and not in Saudi, it was the Cinco de Mayo. Canelo looked like shit. He didn't want to fight, both of them. And if one of them, the Cuban, doesn't want to fight, he need to take a risk. And he never took a risk. He didn't care. And to overpay the fighters, you're not getting better fight.
Yeah.
You're getting safe fight.
Yeah.
And that hope, Mr. Al-Sheikh, you understand that you cannot buy good fights. You need to give him a money to believe in tomorrow, not only for that night. And this will happen on New York, and this will happen in Saudi Arabia.
So the argument there, Joe, is that just because you pay people 7, 8-figure sums for sparring sessions, don't expect not to get a sparring session. I mean, I'm interpreting there what he said, but I mean, you can't really disagree with a lot of what he said because of the outcome of the fight and the way the fight played out. Look, people can say, oh, how can you criticize Canelo? It was all William School's fault. Was it all William School's fault? I don't know if it was. Joe, what are your thoughts?
Listen, it takes two to make a fight, right? And you kind of know what you're getting with William Skull, because if you look at the Shishkin fight, right? He didn't throw a lot of he didn't throw a lot of punches in that fight either. He threw about 359 punches in that fight, and he landed 80. And I thought Shishkin won the fight. A lot of people thought, so you knew what you were getting with William Skull going in, right? So as I said, it takes two to make a fight. I'm not here running interference for Skull, but I've said this and I'll say it a million times. I expect more out of who is perceived to be the better, more skilled fighter. Canelo Alvarez is still on the ring's pound for pound list, right? He's considered by some an all-time great. He walks into the Hall of Fame if he retires tomorrow. So I always put the onus more on the guy who's the better fighter. You expect more from the fighter who is supposed to be better, more skilled. And Skull, again, I would argue, is a mid-level guy. He's not an elite guy. Canelo is supposedly an elite guy, and he did not perform elite. So you knew what you were getting with Skull. This guy was never a high-volume guy. He wasn't a high-volume guy in his last fight. So you knew what you were getting. So the onus, in my opinion, was more so on Canelo to make the fight. And Canelo did not make the fight. He did not make the fight. He threw 152 punches. And when you hear a guy like Canelo,
could you repeat that, please? I want everybody
to hear
152.
There's no excuse for him throwing 152 punches in that fight. Because Shishkin was fighting the same guy, right? the same guy who was running from him. And guess how many punches Shishkin threw? 748, right? And he landed 110 punches. And Shishkin is not nowhere near as good as Canelo Alvarez. And if he could throw 748 punches and Canelo only throws 152, what does that tell you? That doesn't mean Shishkin's a better fighter than Canelo. You know what that meant?
It means he was working harder.
That means he was trying to win the fight. He was trying to cut off the ring. He was making a concerted. You know what Canelo's like? And again, I'm sorry because I have these man fans on Twitter, and I tweeted out, I don't see how Canelo wins against Crawford if he only throws
152 punches.
So you know what Canelo's like? And Canelo, the writing's been on the wall. In the last three years or so, you got to listen to people. When people tell you who they are and what they're about, you got to listen to them. In interviews, oh, I could do whatever I want. I don't care what people think. Whenever you get to that level, imagine going to your job and you have the ability to do whatever you want, right? You're going to show up a half hour late. You're going to not put out the best effort because no matter what you do, you're getting paid anyways. So what incentive is there for you to work hard and do better? And I'm not hating on Canelo. I'm just telling you, human nature, human instinct. Thank you. That's what I'm telling you. You know what Canelo's like? Canelo's like that cop who's 6 months away from his pension. Do you think he's chasing that purse snatcher 10 blocks? Or is he telling his partner who's probably 5 or 10 years younger than him, hey, what, bro, I'm sitting this one out. You go chase him down. I got my pension in 6 months. Right? That's what Canelo is right now.
I mean, you see it in every you see it in teaching too. I mean,
yeah.
I'm
not hating on Canelo, right?
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, this is the nature of the beast. He is telling you, I don't give a fuck. I'm getting $80 million, whether I throw 10 punches or 1,000 punches. What the fuck is the incentive here? There's no fucking incentive.
But with Canelo, there's something else too. There's something else with Canelo. Let me land this plane real quick.
Okay? He said it. I've done everything I could do in boxing. I've accomplished all of my goals, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, he's the only person to ever unify the super middleweight division, ever become undisputed at super middleweight. I've never seen an undisputed super middleweight champion, ever. That's number one. I want to say he's maybe tied. He's in a small group of Mexican fighters that have won titles in 4 weight classes. I think he's in a small group of
very
fighters.
Small.
I think did Marquez do it? I think what Marquez won at one. I want to say Marquez won at 130, 135,
Marquez,
147, and I'm not even sure if did Marquez do it because he won. I think
you're talking about
Juan Manuel.
Juan Manuel definitely did it.
What was the weight classes for him? Because he did it at 140, yeah. So 140, 135, 130, and I think he did it. I want to say he did it at 126 too, but I'll have to double check.
He definitely did it at 126.
Yeah, so he's in a small group of fighters, small handful of fighters that have won titles in 4 Mexican fighters who won. So there's nothing else for him to do. He said he's done it all, right? So all that's left is money. And when you get to that point where no matter what you do, you're going to get paid exorbitant amounts of money. I'm hearing he signed a 5-fight deal with Turki Al-Sheikh in Riyadh season. It's been reported. I don't know how true it is, but this deal is $400 million. And I heard that he got $80 million for the skull fight. This is what's being reported.
Well, now you're bringing in another analogy that I'm going to add on to your analogy with the cop, right?
Yeah.
He's the boss's son. He's the guy. He's Hunter Biden showing up for the no-show job with Burisma in the Ukraine, not having to really do too much because he knows that he's going to get paid regardless of what level of effort he puts in. And on top of it, and I've been a defender of Canelo in a lot of these close decisions he's had, But have you ever seen a close decision not go the way of Canelo? I mean, they all go to Canelo.
No,
And
that's the
even
caveat.
against School, the first round, I believe people can verify this, but I believe I heard that in the first round he didn't even land a punch, but won the round. So, or at least he landed maybe one punch, but it was definitely fewer than the minimal amount of punches that School landed. So he earned the benefit of the doubt, right? And he always earns the benefit of the doubt. And when there are close rounds and close fights, Arislandi Lara, Triple G, there are other cases as well. Canelo gets the benefit of the doubt. So if you've got El Patron in Turkey, right? The big boss, right? Having your back, investing all of these tens and millions into you, and you're fighting in Saudi. I mean, there's zero chance you're not going to get the benefit of the doubt. So what incentive is there to really work the hardest possible to win every round decisively and even go for a knockout? Is there any incentive to do that at all at this point?
Big fat zero. Big fat zero. And I'm just going to be honest with you. The fans have already spoken. The pay-per-views are way, way down. They're way, way down, right?
Yeah.
So the market. This is why the market it's artificially inflated, because you're paying fighters the same amount of money as if they were selling 1 million pay-per-view buys, but they're not. You're giving guys crazy guarantees, and the viewership does not reflect the money that you're paying them. It just doesn't. If you break it down economically, like everyone loved to talk about how fights lose money when it's not the promoter that they like. But are Turki Al-Sheikh fights actually turning a profit? And does he even care, because he's using the Saudi sovereign wealth fund? So is he operating at a loss leader, just like BBC was back in the early days when they got that Waddell Reed money? I would say yes. He's operating at a loss leader right now, in my opinion. I don't even think it's opinion. I think the circumstantial evidence would present that to you, that he's operating at a loss leader. Right?
Yeah. And, this doesn't bode well if you go back to Rick Reno's comments there about the Ring magazine, essentially changing the game, changing the construct that these promoters have been using to essentially fleece the fans and put on shitty cards, et cetera, et cetera. Yo, I was in Vegas in a way against Cardenas. I was there. Shout out to Steve Kim. Shout out to other people I saw when I was out there. Okay? Who put on that card? An old school promoter in Bob Arum's Top Rank Promotions. That they did it the way they've always done it. And that show on Sunday, a day not typical for boxing, at least here in the United States, was better than the Friday show and the Saturday show combined by, I don't know, what are we talking multiples of? 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000? Does it even matter? Because I didn't even rate those shows Friday and Saturday night. So, it's one thing to get on stage and criticize promoters and the way they've been doing things and this and that and how the game is going to be changed, only to have back-to-back cards that are eclipsed by an old school promoter doing it the way that they've always done it and putting on a tremendous show. And that fight with El Divino, right? Rafael Espinoza. Oh my God. Better than any fight on either of those two cards. Oh, yeah. That main event with Inoue, it's an insult to even compare it to any of the fights on Friday or Saturday night. Go for it, Joe.
And I'll repeat. not every card is going to be a home run. Not every card is going to be a killer. But even on paper, these back-to-back cards, there was really no 50. Like Canelo was a gigantic favorite over Skull, right? So you didn't have 50-50 fights. So don't make statements like all of our cards are 50-50 when Turkey Al-Sheikh has you fight these stay busy these tune-ups interim fights. However you want to categorize them.
Bro, they were tune-ups.
They were tune-ups.
School was a tune-up opponent. Rolly was supposed to be a tune-up opponent, right? Ramirez was supposed to be a tune-up opponent, and of course so was Arnold Barbosa. They were all supposedly. Go for it, Joe. Sorry.
No, finish. I'll go ahead and finish.
No, I'm just saying, like none of those fights were on paper 50-50 fights.
None of them were. So
maybe Bacolia Jagba.
Yeah, that was actually a good fight, and I thought Ajagba won that fight too.
Yeah.
So again, like I said, these weren't 50-50 fights, and when you make a statement like that, you're going to be held accountable for it. So Rick Reno, as much as I respect the guy, I have no problem with the guy. He's a pretty solid guy. I mean, I commend him for all the work he's done over the years. But I think his words came back to haunt him, and the irony of those statements. And right after you made those statements, not too long thereafter, you had these back-to-back. I'm just going to say it.
Literally 1 week later.
Bad cards. Bad cards.
I would go further. I'd say they were horrible cards.
Yeah, I wanted to go even further myself.
No, rank it 0 out of 10. 0 out of 10. How did you rank Inoue versus Cardenas?
Probably 8.5, 9.
Right?
Yeah.
Especially if you start with that 10 p.m. Eastern start time, right? The co-main and the main. I'd actually have to give it 10 out of 10. You know why? It was on regular ESPN. There's no pay-per-view charge, right? Rank 9. Let's settle on that. Rank the Canelo fight. I mean, the fight card.
2.
Yeah. And rank the one in New York City.
4, 5.
Okay. Yeah. LT's pointing out the Munguia versus Bruno was a good fight. It was a tactical fight. It was a strategic fight. It was a fight where I think Munguia was trying to implement changes, right? He wasn't volume punching as much. He wasn't going for broke as much. He was much tighter in terms of that transition from his offensive output to his defensive awareness. You saw him also trying to protect himself as best as he could with kind of a higher hand positioning with his left hand to defend from Bruno's kind of wraparound right hand that got him in the first fight. It was an intriguing matchup. I do have to say that the Riyadh card was better than the Times Square card for sure. Yeah. But it still wasn't a good card for a pay-per-view card.
No, it's not a pay-per-view card.
It just wasn't.
Not with that main event. And again, you could say what you want about Skull, but Canelo knew what he was getting into. Yeah. You saw Skull against Shishkin, right? He was fighting the same way, was he not, Maestro?
Yeah, he was.
He was like that's
who he is. Watch the tape. Watch the tape. It's out there on these German shows that he's been on.
Go watch him versus Shishkin. I can't. And there are some people, even Teddy Atlas, who I don't really agree with ever, very rarely. He even made a case that you could probably give Skull the victory in that fight. Like he said, that was a 7-5 fight, 6-6 fight, either way, draw or 7-5 either way. I'm not going to go that far, man. Full disclosure.
Well, he's a big Canelo hater, but
full disclosure. I'm just going to tell you, I couldn't stay awake the whole. Because it was on so late.
I fell asleep in Vegas.
I fell asleep watching that fight.
I had to watch it in the morning. I fell asleep.
I'm not trying to be cute here or sarcastic. I literally felt. Anyone can make fun of me. I'll be 56 years old this year. I can't help it. I get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm just wired that way. So I have a hard. That's why I love these cards that start like at 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because I get to watch the main event at 6, 7 o'clock. But I fell asleep. I actually fell asleep.
Yeah, and also, what would have been so bad about having Canelo fight in the evening if you're in the East Coast, or the afternoon if you're in the West Coast? Throw your barbecues, right?
Yeah.
Mucha cerveza, mucha barbacoa. Okay, you do what you need to do. Why does it matter if the fight starts at 2 or 3 in the afternoon? If you're a Canelo fan, aren't you going to watch? Anyhow, we'll talk more about Canelo, hour number 2. I might as well throw the link in there for everybody to watch it. Hour number 2, we'll be talking about the Canelo fight that is slated to take place against, of course, Terrence Bud Crawford. I have my own opinions about this particular fight. I think people are probably going to disagree with some of what I have to say about this fight. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. I'm interested to hear what Joe has to say about it. I think it has the potential to be a major, major flop, definitely in terms of what occurs inside the ring, but also to Joe's point earlier on, in terms of potentially the pay-per-views as well. So we're going to get into that. Hour number 2. I'm also going to ask Joe for his opinion on a couple hot topics in the sport that have come up this week, namely Manny Pacquiao's return to the ring. Oh. Where's Little Penny when you need him? Against Mario Barrios. What the F is going on? Click the link. We're going to talk about that. Hour number 2. Let's talk about it. Sucker Punch. See you soon.